Hi, welcome back to Move to Improve. Again, this is Dr. Matt Jurgis here with Dr. Greg Uchas. Our guest today is Anton Joseph. He's worked hand in hand with a lot of professional athletes, and he is the director of Strive Fitness here in Calgary. Anton, how are you?
Living the dream, living the dream. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, so Matt, Anton and I opened up a clinic in Southwest United's indoor training facility in the southeast there, and actually it was Anton. You were the one that kind of put me in that direction and got me in with that club, and yeah, man. So we started the clinic, and Anton's doing the strength and conditioning, and his whole fitness center is basically there, right?
Yeah. We partnered with Southwest United a number of years ago in order to work with the organization to help them with their Alberta or their Canadian youth soccer license. So one of the components to that was to provide an in-house fitness component for their athletes, to be in a situation where we provided the sports science side of things so that the club athletes were getting the training that was necessary to play soccer at a high level.
Mm-hmm.
And that Canadian soccer youth license gives athletes a pathway to play on a national level. And so it's an initiative from Soccer Canada that has been handed down to the various clubs on a provincial level and as well as on a regional level.
Yeah, and that's how you got me going too, right? Is with the National Youth License. They basically need to affiliate themselves with the Sports Medicine Center, right? So they have access to sports medicine care. So the club actually brought me in at your recommendation. We ended up opening up a clinic in there. So
yeah, and you know what? It's a perfect marriage because one of the biggest areas that youth sport is lacking is one assessment. Being in a position where you can assess any type of deficiencies as it relates to biomechanics, movement, that sort of thing, strength issues, that those components, and then ongoing training so that the athlete can maximize their potential as it relates to speed, strength, and then obviously address and handle the rigors of sport. So it works. It's a perfect marriage.
yeah, so I thought today we would talk about a couple things. One, we should talk about how long we've known each other.
Oh God!
And where that all started.
We're gonna date ourselves here.
Yeah. And the other thing is to talk about some of the athletes you work with.
Mm-hmm.
And then let's talk about sort of that functional movement exam we've been doing for physical literacy as a third piece to this. Is that
Let's
cool?
Sorry to cut you off, but let's start by getting, who is Anton Joseph?
Yeah.
I want the depth here, right?
Yeah, I'll give you
the legend.
You know how to make a black man blush, I tell you. I started off in the sport training industry way back in 1990. So that would be 32 years ago. Had the good fortune of starting off when I was 6 years old. No, just joking.
Nice try, man. That was Lindsay Park days,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, I started off with Lindsay Park Sports Center, now the Repsol Center, working in. I actually did a certification in strength conditioning and, believe it or not, aerobics. Felt that it would be a good opportunity to get myself in the industry when I was 18, and then I was lucky enough to get involved with a program by the name of the Acceleration Program. It was the Frappier Acceleration Program was a program designed to work with athletes in enhancing their speed, strength, agility, all that good stuff, utilizing a couple of key components, including a skating treadmill where you can actually wear your skates on. I was actually one of the first trainers in Canada to work with athletes, hockey players on that program, and then was in a position where I worked with running athletes on a running treadmill that hit a top speed of about 30 miles an hour, a top elevation about 40 degrees or 45 degrees. And I was fortunate enough to be in a position where at the ripe old age of 19, was working with individuals from the Flames, the Maple Leafs, the Canucks, worked with a number of national level athletes. And at the time, I was actually playing football. Football was my main sport, and played with the Calgary Colts here in Calgary, and was fortunate enough to win a national championship with them. Fast forward a couple of years later, I was able to gain a scholarship down to the United States, and that led me to finishing my degree in kinesiology and business, and coming back up and working with, continuing to work with athletes over the years. And when I graduated, I realized, I should be doing this on my own, and started Strive Fitness. And from there, over the last 32 years, I've had the good fortune of working close to 40,000 athletes. I've seen individuals ranging from professional athletes like Gary Roberts, Joe Noondike, Trevor Kidd, Ron Stern, Sandy McCarthy, Ryan Getzlaff. I actually had a chance to develop and work with him and prepare him for the NHL Combine as well as the World Junior Tryouts, which he ended up obviously making and having a fairly successful career, to individuals that were told that they were never going to walk again, and to have them skipping rope and doing different things. So a lot of my stuff that I do with athletes it tends to be more athletic based, and I treat all my clients like athletes, just at different levels or different points in terms of their conditioning, that sort of thing. One of the biggest things, though, I've found over the years, individuals sell themselves short in terms of what they can do. And mentally, athletes have different and varying degrees of belief in what they can do physically, in terms of their skill, their strength, that sort of thing. A lot of times they just need the knowledge, and they just need the guidance necessary to get them to where they need to be, right? And one of the things that you guys are doing right now as it relates to the functional movement testing gives athletes a good gauge of where they're at. And it's so important to do that assessment component, right? Because if you don't have that assessment component, it's like going on a road trip. If you don't know where you are or where you want to be, how are you going to get there, right? And so I feel that, us partnering and working with Southwest is going to give these athletes the tools that are necessary in order to then expand their opportunities and give them the guidance to head on the road to fitness, so to speak.
Yeah. Love it. So I actually met you when you were doing the acceleration program. You were Kelly Forbes.
Forbes.
Remember, I was working with.
I talked to Kelly the other day. So Kelly, former a good friend of mine, and
He's Golden State. Right?
No. Kelly is with the San Antonio Spurs. So he works as a strength coach with the San Antonio Spurs, and more so translating some of the things that they do on the court or in the weight room and on the court into actual basketball specific skill and movement. But those
were fun days, man.
Yeah, I'm thinking that was close to 25-30 years.
96, 97, because I was working with Calgary National Track Club, and we had a sick team back then.
Yeah.
I remember we did a little meet, a little 60-meter indoor meet at Lindsay Park, and they ended up having an A final and a B final, and 4 lanes each, and 7 of the 8 athletes that were in those finals were CITC, and 8th place did a 699.
Yeah.
Right now, you see a lot of kids winning 720, 725, but 8th place was 699. I still remember it. It was
so I, unbeknownst to you, before I went down to my state, I decided to join Calgary National, actually with John Cannon and what have you. And so I was, so I was working, as I mentioned, working at the facility, but also training as an athlete, preparing for my season. And ended up joining the track club because at the time there was our program, but there wasn't a lot of other things that were out there for sport development. So what I ended up doing was running track. Now, the one way to get faster as an athlete is to run with fast people. And fortunately, we had Donovan Bailey running at that track club, and Jillian Richardson, Karen Clark, some of the fastest people in Canada at the time. And I remember
Brad McKay.
Brad McKay,
He was on the 4x1.
100%. And so I remember sitting there in 1994 in the weight room, sipping on a protein shake, talking to Donovan, and Donovan said, "You know, Anton, in the year the world's going to know who Donovan Bailey is." Sure enough, I'm down in the States playing football and running track at Minot State, and I hear Donovan Bailey wins the World Track Championships and sets a new world record. I'm like,
Yeah.
wow.
986, remember that? Or 983, 986.
Well, I was 90, 95, 96, yeah.
Yeah, but what was his time? I think it was 9.83 seconds is what it was, right?
Yeah.
Because then Bruni came after and did 9.83001
Yeah.
or something like that after, and he didn't get any accolades.
Oh,
Yeah.
but no, it's amazing. Like I said, when you've had, it's amazing and you'd probably attest to this. It's amazing the amount of individuals that you come across over the years in terms of development and athletic prowess, and how it elevates. Success breeds success, right?
Yeah.
And being a part of that has given me some of the tools necessary to develop my own clients and my own athletes to get them to where they want to be.
It's funny because, just a total aside, but I remember way back then I was playing Ultimate.
Yes.
And there was one guy playing Ultimate who was just ridiculously fast. This is totally an aside, by the way. But he was like, "Oh my God, this guy's crazy. He could just destroy everybody." And I said, "You got to come out for track, man. I'll get you on the track with John Cannon." And, so Cannon takes him out and has him do a couple tempo runs with Brad McQuaig. And he looks at me and goes, "Yeah. No good." Like, Brad destroyed him in just a tempo run. I'm thinking, holy crap.
Yeah.
These athletes, like, you get to know them on a personal basis, but when you actually have some sort of reference or comparison to what everybody else does and what they do, holy jeez. Like, these guys fast or strong or explosive or skilled or talented. Like, it's...
Well, and part of that is, quite honestly, part of that is the volume and the build-up. To develop a high-performance athlete at that level, as you know, it takes years upon years of training and work in terms of their mobility, their flexibility, their strength, their reaction times, and it's rarely do you have an individual that just shows up and then is at a world-class level. A lot of those individuals have to be developed and or recruited. I had a gentleman that came in off the street, 6'10", 400 pounds. And he comes to me one day and he says, "I heard I need to be here in terms of my training if I want to play football." I shook my head yes. And he goes, I had asked him if he'd ever played football. He goes, "No." But he was a basketball player at U of L. And so put him through a series of tests and had him do some drills and what have you. Just in filming those drills and sending it out to a couple of schools. He had 5 Division I offers.
Wow.
Just like that,
Really?
right?
Yeah.
So because they saw the raw size, they saw the raw talent, and they felt that they can mold him and shape him to where he needed to be. Unfortunately, he never ended up playing, but that's another story.
Well, that was a crappy ending to that story.
Yeah.
It's not all sunshine and puppy dogs.
Okay, so what are we going to talk? We'll talk about our history together. We did that, right? That was way back in 1996. It dates ourselves a little bit, man. But that acceleration program was pretty cool, those high-speed treadmills.
Yeah.
There were some athletes that were competing at a national/international level in the 100 and the 200 that did like 90% of their training on the high-speed treadmill.
Yep.
Really?
Yeah.
It was definitely ahead of its time. I think part of the challenge with any type of sport development and sport training or what have you, a lot of the stuff that we do isn't necessarily new. A lot of the treadmill training and what have you was based from research and studies from Russia and what have you. I think part of the challenge then is just making sure that we have the good and the proper mix in terms of training and development, and then application to the sport. So being in a position where you can transfer those skills and that strength, that speed, and what have you that you develop in the weight room and or on the track into gameplay, and being in a situation where you have that transference. Sometimes athletes get obsessed with for example, they're told by a coach, "Oh, you need to get bigger." Well, and then they get bigger and they can't move, or they get bigger and they're not as effective on the ice or on the field. And so our job as strength conditioning coaches and health practitioners is to make sure that whatever we do with our athletes can transfer into physical literacy in terms of play on the field.
That's an interesting point because what we're going for can't really be quantified in a way that is kind of immediately gratifying for an athlete, right? Like you bringing up size or something like that, speed, whatever, but is it functional? Can it be applied in a sports specific way or even in a general way? Like overall, are you a well-rounded athlete? And that's hard for an athlete to kind of make a goal because they don't really know what that looks like until we get them testing what kind of functional things we're looking for, right?
Yeah, it's all about application, right? It's great to be able to bench press X amount of pounds, but if you can't do a functional squat, or if you can't balance and do some of the things that are required for your sport, you're not going to be as effective. I always tell athletes all the time, it's not like you're going to have a dumbbell on the ice, right, or on the field. So you've got to be able to transfer whatever you're learning in the weight room and or in the training environment to your sport and make it specific to the activity that you're trying to achieve. So I know there's some pushback in terms of sports specificity in terms of weight training and that sort of thing. But at the same time, it's not about just doing a PR after PR after PR. You've got to be in a position where you are able then to take whatever you've learned in terms of development of power and or explosiveness and then put it into a functional movement on the field or on the ice or on the court.
Yeah, apply to gameplay.
Yeah.
Nice. So, so like I said at the beginning, we're going to talk about three things, right? Our history, we're going to talk about Anton Joseph. We get it. Anton Joseph is a big deal. And he's worked with a lot of world-class athletes for sure, right? That's our history kind of goes there. And then the third thing I wanted to talk about was what we're doing with Southwest United. Right?
Well, like I said, it's exciting times because, in Canada, I would suggest in Canada we tend to be a little bit behind in terms of what we do with our athletes in terms of development. You look at other countries and some of the leaps and bounds that they've had as it relates to success in the Olympics or at an international level. We tend to be a little bit behind. So it's exciting times that we are looking at working with athletes at a younger age group, identifying deficiencies as it relates to their movement, as it relates to their strength, whether it's core strength and or tensile strength, and then being able to then prescribe programming and exercises to develop those athletes at an early age before they've developed those bad habits, before they've developed bad habits as it relates to their biomechanics, that sort of thing. Gone are the days where you then look at an athlete and provide training for them when they're 17, 18 years of age.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
it's almost too late, as you know, right?
Yeah.
And so to be in a position where we can identify deficiencies at an early age and then put them on the path to success earlier on, as opposed to trying to correct some of the issues that have been happening over the years.
So on our last podcast with Brad Lazelle, we really did touch on this, and he had mentioned the same point that Canada was kind of behind the curve, has a hard time letting go of some of these old school mentalities of training. And can you speak to some of the barriers that are kind of unique to Canada in that way?
Yeah, one of the biggest problems that I see, we tend to be very passive in terms of how our approach to working with youth and younger athletes. For example, I was working with another soccer team a number of years ago, and the individual that was in charge of that program came from Eastern Germany, was a well-known player agent and worked with several professional clubs and what have you throughout Europe. And I had said to him that we were going to introduce a couple of different components that aren't being done here in Canada. And so he talked to a number of individuals throughout the country and to get their opinion. And he came back to me in his German accent and he said, Anton, nobody's doing this in Canada. And I said, yeah, no, I realize that. And he goes, this is good.
Yeah.
Because what we're doing
Yeah.
will progress the athlete further, quicker, and get the results. That team that I worked with, unfortunately, had two coaches that had taken the best players, basically cherry-picked the best players that they could find, and left the kids, or left 5 players left on the team. And so this individual was charged with trying to piece a team together. No one thought they were going to win a game. Not only did they win undefeated in cities, they went undefeated in provincials and placed 5th in the nation. 11 of those kids ended up playing either college, high-level college, and or professional soccer. Yet nobody thought at an early age that they were going to do anything. And they were fitter, they were more disciplined, and they were mentally tough. And so I would talk to kids that would play this particular team, and it was funny because they would. Some of the kids that were their opponents would say, "Oh, you know what? We're better when we play. We played them." And I asked them what the score was when they play, and they said, "Oh, they beat us 9-1, but we're better."
Yeah, right.
And I said, "Well, what do you mean by that?" They said, "Well, we have better skill, we have better movement of the ball, that sort of thing, but they just keep coming, and they keep coming, and they push, and they do the things that are necessary in order to win games." And that's huge, right?
Yeah.
I always say hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard, right? And if you have the wherewithal to and the gas in the tank in order to do what you need to do physically, you can do anything you want on the field, right?
Yeah. No, I love it. I mean, it's one thing that's been lacking here. I mean, this early sports specialization piece, right?
Yeah.
Not doing a whole bunch of functional training outside of like soccer or any others, or hockey is a great example. And the other thing is identifying these kids early, finding these breakdowns in the way they move and the way they alter and the way they compensate, and actually really helping them with their physical development. Because you know more than I, like the athlete off the field of play or off the ice, however fit and however physically literate they are, that translates to their performance.
Yeah,
right?
100%.
During gameplay, like full on, full stop. If you have a ton of skill but you don't have that physical literacy, you don't excel. You don't get to the next level, right? Once they start going through puberty, and once it becomes sort of a man's game or women's game instead of girls or boys game, it's, if you don't have the physical literacy, you're done. So this is huge. I'm super excited. So just to give our viewers a point of what we're doing here, Dr. Georges here, he along with some others did a bunch of testing on the players for the World's Longest Hockey Game, right? We did functional testing so that they can address any sort of deficiencies because that game's going on April 1st to April 11th, right? Mm-hmm. And then we're doing all the functional testing on all the competitive players for Southwest United. So there's 400 of them. Mm-hmm. And we're finding just patterns of common breakdown. I mean, certainly one of them these days, and you know better than I, man, it's just the freaking posture in these kids, right? It's awful. So, and that's breaking down because they can't get into athlete-ready position, and they're not firing the core systems properly, and they're altering their movement patterns, and they're
posterior chain issues,
awful, right? And so, you know, that's what I love, the fact that we get to address that with these kids. Mm-hmm. And it'll be really interesting to see where it's at in 10 years or 5 years. Like, unbelievable.
Well, you know, and just on an injury standpoint, right? Even forget about the athletic performance. Ensuring that the athlete is able to enjoy the sport injury-free, or mitigate the exposure to injury. So many careers are ended prematurely because of a deficiency or an imbalance or something not being addressed when it could have been addressed early on in their athletic career.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. We came up with that SWO factor. So we have our testing is out of 37, and if you're in SWO is Southwest United, right? So if you're in, like, I don't know what it was, 28 to 37, you're developing normally, everything's going great, and then you're giving them specific technique training videos on sprint technique and etc. And then if they have a number in the middle, whatever that was, 20 to 27 or 28 or whatever, they're in that yellow phase, and that risk of injury becomes minimal, but it's there, right? There is a risk of injury, and then below that, high risk of injury, right? Because they're just inefficient.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate, but it's amazing how many individuals are falling within that moderate to
The high risk
factor, and part of it, quite honestly, is our lack of physical activity for kids at an early age, and direction. I always say no one ever teaches kids how to run, how to jump, how to move
in Canada.
At all at an early age. We just like I said before, cherry pick and find athletes that can do some of those things in order to be effective, where we could potentially develop a lot more athletic individuals if we provided them with the ground foundation in terms of basic movement, basic biomechanics, and teaching them what to do.
Absolutely. And I think that for a lot of those kind of volunteer coaches or whatever, it's a lot less sexy to be like, okay, we're going to show you guys how to run, like, no. And the kids are like, well, I know how to run, right? I don't want to spend time on this, right? Let me throw a ball, right? But no, it's huge, and you've got to start from the ground up. But I just wanted to say, I think the best part of the relationship that Proactive and Strive has is bridging that gap, which is just missing between healthcare and coach and training. It's missing so much in community sports, right? So it's a unique relationship that hopefully catches fire within Canada.
Well, it's so essential because, and we routinely come across athletes that might not have a specific injury, but we've seen an alignment issue, we've seen a postural issue, we've seen maybe a mobility issue that can be addressed with various treatments and various modalities in order to get that athlete to where they want to be, and so we've got a great working relationship with Dr. Sharon down at Southwest United and Greg here, and doing those things to try to get athletes advanced so that they're not having to deal with things as they come up, being no pun intended, proactive as opposed to reactive.
Yeah, baby. You know what's great? It's just crazy. Like, our viewers maybe will appreciate this. You guys know this. When you go to, say, behind the scenes with an NFL team, right? You've got guys like us, right, working on these players, and it's in an open format right next to strength and conditioning. Right, and you're talking and you're viewing, and so the chiro, the physio, the AT's right there, treating them, and then they're going and training, and the strength and conditioning person's there, and it's just a full-on communication between them. And then as you get down into community sport, it's like training, and then strength and conditioning is somewhere. If the kids, if the parents decide they want to put their kids into it, and then they just take their kids to, or take them to the medical doctor if they have an injury. Like, there's no, you just don't. They have no concept of what actually exists at a pro and a national level.
No continuity and no direction, and it's amazing. I have an athlete that is a younger tennis player, 10 years old, ranked second in Canada, and one of the things that has happened. She started her training and what have you, and people say, well, 10 years old is pretty young for an athlete. Well, she's sponsored by Wilson, and in the sport of tennis, if you're not at the level that you need to be by a certain point, you're not going to see success later on in life. And when we were affected by some of the health restrictions and what have you locally, they picked up and moved to Vancouver and to continue on their training, because they realized that if they had too much of a gap, she would fall behind on a world stage. When we had our second lockdown, they moved to Dubai so that they can continue on their training. And to see that level of commitment, albeit extreme, shows me that people are starting to think about long-term athletic development as it relates to ensuring that the athlete is getting the strength conditioning, the assessment, and
The healthcare support.
the healthcare support, 100%, and making sure that there aren't any gaps along the way, so that those athletes can excel. And then it's amazing though, because people say to me, well, why is she so good? Well, because she's taking the time to, her parents are taking the time to ensure that she's getting all those issues taken care of, and that her training is consistent.
Yeah, and I just want to bring up again that if there's anything that kind of we advocate for, and I know Greg, having worked with the athletes and you as well, especially in the Olympics, is seeing that really the secret sauce is having a collaborative approach and having communication, breaking down those barriers, and it's just something that's completely missing in sports for a lot of us, for a lot of people, and for a lot of parents that don't really understand. So if anybody's wondering, how do you get there? How does your kid get there? It takes many experts. Get the right person for the job.
It takes a village, so to speak.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I remember I was part of a development group with the Canadian Sport Institute going around 2007, 2008. We sat around a table and we created the concept of the integrative support team, right? And so basically going into the 2010 Olympics, you would have physician, chiropractor, physio, AT, massage therapist, sports psychologist, strength and conditioning, head coach, high performance director. Everybody's sitting around the table talking about that athlete. And what it did is it broke down the barriers, professional barriers, and everybody played to their skill set instead of the professional barriers, right? To the best benefit of the athlete. And man, like we
The results,
we
right?
set a record in 2010, right? Of how many gold medals and how many medals we got for Canada, right?
Well, yeah, and you mentioned Kelly. Kelly was a national team coach with Skeleton at the time.
Yeah.
We actually had the 2010 Canadian Olympic skeleton team training at our facility, because we actually had more Olympic platforms than the Olympic facility at the time. So so we had all the athletes training there. So John Montgomery and a number of other athletes. So it's like you say, it's a village, and if you can create that ecosystem for an athlete to develop, man, like you said, it's a secret sauce. If you'll develop some really good talent.
Yeah.
I think that the challenge is one, individual professionals realizing and looking at working within their wheelhouse and their area of expertise, and then two, having the ability and the confidence in oneself to say, you know what, I know this, and not trying to overreach in terms of their level of expertise, so that they benefit the athlete, and being in a position where the athlete's development and the athlete's health is number one, as opposed to the trainer's ego, so to speak. Right?
And do you want to know one of the craziest, I don't even know how to put it, one of the craziest concepts out there that explains these points is that people decide that they're going to start running and they're going to run a marathon. And they never, ever talk to anybody about running technique.
Yeah.
It's crazy, and we see so many runners in here, right? Because they're just a mess. They never learn how to do it. They never do anything other than run, right?
Yeah. Or even getting the right shoes.
Yeah, right.
Or
crazy.
like foundation stuff, right? And part of it is like what we've talked about. People think, well, you know what? I know how to run. Well, there's a lot of stuff that goes into running.
Crazy.
Whether it's
and all these kids trying to sprint, these young kids, and they look like ostriches, right?
Well,
They
yeah.
have no concept of sprint technique, right?
Not to mention, they're going through their growth patterns and being in a position where their bodies are changing. Hormonally, they're changing. And so all of a sudden, what was fairly good running form when they were 9, 10 years old, they hit 15, 16, and they look like giraffes, right?
Yeah.
And so to be in a position where you have the ability to assess an individual, to see what their baseline is, and then to be able to provide training on in that standpoint, and then follow up with ongoing testing to see if the individual is headed down the right path. Like I said, in that road trip analogy, to be in a situation where you go on a road trip, you have a start point, a destination, and then checkpoints along the way to make sure that you're headed in the right direction and not lost.
Yeah, and I think it's important because it's a little bit daunting for an athlete to go, oh, I need to see this person and this person and this person. They don't really know, nor do they want to be seeing so many people, because to them it seems unnecessary. So that's why it's so important to have someone quarterback their health care, and it may seem daunting to be seeing multiple experts, but otherwise you're banging a square peg with a round hammer time and time again, and really it's a diminishing return at some point if you're not having the right person for the job, or you're not looking at the full picture.
Well, and we tend to be...
Sorry.
Is that a saying?
Oh, square peg with a round hand.
Is that
a square peg and a round
I was-
hole? Man?
What is the saying anyway?
You're trying to put a square peg in a round hole.
Round
I
hole.
think that's what it is, isn't it?
I
Oh
think
yeah,
so,
so round hammer would work. Anyway.
But to be in a position too where, as a parent, my big thing is to make sure that I'm doing what's best for my child, right? And so, when it comes to his education, whether it's his experience, I want to give my child the best opportunity possible. And so, if I knew that I was part of a soccer club that had the ability to assess my child and then provide them with the ongoing training that's required to make my child the best athlete that they can be, and then follow up and deal with any issues and bumps along the road that might happen, I'd be ecstatic. And I look at what we're building and what we've built with Southwest. It's Southwest United. It's such a great opportunity.
Oh, it's become a huge thing.
Well, and you're going to see a systemic increase in terms of the results, both on and off the field. And when I say that, I mean in terms of other clubs and other individuals realizing, either we need to emulate that or we need to join and do what they're doing, for sure.
Yeah, hopefully we can be the start to that movement. And that's kind of what we have been, and I think that's what makes us unique, is getting communication right across the board. But anyways, thanks for joining us, Anton. Unless Greg has his hand up.
Yeah, can I tell a couple stories?
Okay.
Because John Montgomery, I thought I'd tell a story about John, and then I want to tell a story about Kelly.
Oh God, yeah.
Well, there's a million stories about Kelly, but the Kelly story was, we were in Sestriere, which is Italy, where they held the Olympics 2006 Olympics Torino, right? But up in the village in Sestriere, and we had a World Cup there, and beautiful day out, blue sky, sunshine, and I'm standing with Forbes, and they got a World Cup the next day event, and we're talking about that mountain. I'm like, man, that'd take forever to climb. He's like, are you kidding me? It's a classic line. Are you kidding me? I could do that in like 2 hours. I'm like, you can't do that in 2 hours. There's no way you can do that in 2 hours. I could totally do that in 2 hours. So I said, I will bet you $1,000 that you can't climb that mountain in 2 hours.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
Done. Right? So of course, so now the whole team is outside, and all the skeleton athletes are there, and Forbes is there, and we're just kind of finalizing out the rules, and we've got some binoculars so we can watch them, and he's kind of 3-point stance at the start line type thing, and finally the coach comes running out. We are not doing this. There's no way. She was so mad at me. He's doing a World Cup event tomorrow, and that's Forbes, right?
Oh man.
He
Well,
never turned down a challenge.
So I have a story. Morgan Alexander, former bobsledder or what have you. Morgan actually trained at my facility at one time, and he's currently with Bobsled Canada. But he came up to me one day after a training session, and he goes, "Anton, I have something to admit to you." I go, "What's that?" He goes, "I have to admit, the worst beatdown that I've ever had as an athlete was by you and Kelly Forbes at Lindsay Park." And I looked at him and I was totally didn't know what he was talking about. And so then I'm in a position where I decided, you know what, I asked him what he was talking about, and he goes, well, when I was in high school, you and Kelly came up to me and a buddy of mine, and we were both basketball players at the time. He said, can you, are you in a position where you guys want to play a little one-on-one? I said, sure.
Don't mind that, by the way. They're just doing construction all over this damn building these days.
Conveniently for us, yeah.
So anyways, we ended up proceeding to beat down these guys 21-0 in terms of one-on-one. I think we played 3 games. He goes, this was the worst beatdown I've ever had as an athlete.
Well, Forbes, he also played CIS, didn't he?
Yeah, he was on the junior national team. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll tell one more story about John Montgomery before we end it. So, John Montgomery won the gold medal, 2010 skeleton, right? Yeah. Drank the pitcher of beer.
Yes.
You remember that? You saw that thing where he went up and he auctioned it off.
Yeah, I was supposed to be there anyway, but I was too cheap to buy a ticket. But anyways.
So he got up on stage. He grabbed a pitcher of beer from somebody in the crowd. Got up on stage. They interviewed him, and they said, "Okay, we're going to auction off this beer." So something starts going off from the auctioneer voice. He says, "A bit sold." And he's going to the beer. Sold to the person drinking the beer and guzzles it. Right.
Yeah.
And that was sort of his famous thing. Did you know that John Montgomery is an auctioneer?
Yes, I did.
Really?
Yeah, I did. In Saskatchewan, right?
You know what? That's more information than I had. Because when we were on tour together, he used to give me lessons, so I had homework to do all the time. So one of them is you have to say a big black bug bit a big black bear. Okay, try it.
Oh,
Black bug.
Big black bud.
Bit a big black bear. Right? And you keep saying it, and you go, a big black bug bit a big black bear, and you have to say it faster. A big black bug bit a big black bear, big black bug bit a big black bear. You have to do it 100 times. Big black bug bit a big black bear, a big black bit a big black bear. And then you get better and better and better at it. And then my other lessons were like you had to count to 100 by fives, but you had to say the number twice. Right, so 5, 10, 10, 15, 20, 20. So yeah, these were the lessons.
So auctioneer training.
So this, you go to school for it. So anyway, that was my history with John Montgomery is him teaching me to be an auctioneer. Other than treating him every day
and winning a gold medal.
And winning a gold medal, that was good.
Well, if the old chiropractic thing doesn't work out, you got a career in auctioneering then, I guess.
Right. Anyways, neither here nor there, but that'd be a fun story.
Well, guys, thanks for having me. It was a pleasure. And I love sport training and I love athletic development. So to be able to do some of the things that we're doing currently, I tell people all the time I'm retired, and they ask me, well, what do you mean? I go, well, you know what? I get to walk around in sweatpants all day and tell people. Exactly.
It's awesome.
Thank you, guys.
And it's a pleasure working with you, man. I'm having so much fun, getting all this created and moving forward and just turning all these athletes into absolute beasts.
Yeah, no.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
So, any, if people want to enroll their kids, want to hear more about Strive Fitness, where do they go?
Yeah, 100%. You can check us out at strivefitness.ca. So that's strivefitness.ca. And definitely reach out to us on our Instagram and or Facebook, all the social media stuff. We tend to be pretty prolific in terms of the amount of information that we put out. So, yeah, feel free to check us out.
He's got a whole big group of stud football players that he trains too, man.
Oh,
so if you're a football player, that's the place to go.
Football, soccer, hockey. Actually, you know what? We just had one of our goalies just set a CHL record for wins. 20 wins, 0 losses, and only 2 ties. So, so it's pretty neat to see our athletes see the success for sure. So check us out for sure.
Awesome. All right. Thanks for the listens. Appreciate it. All the support. Take care.